Prince Naseem Hamed, the former featherweight world champion, is one of the most polarizing figures in the sport of boxing. With his flamboyant personality, unique fighting style, and incredible punching power, Hamed was both loved and hated by fans. Where did the hate come from? Let's take a closer look at the controversial career of the most hated and elusive KO artist in boxing history. While his flashy ring entrances and trash talk made him a fan favorite,
simply why he went into
his elusive fighting style and devastating knockouts made him a feared opponent.
Hamed gets up.
Prince Naseem, and Nas, also known as Naseem Hamed, is a former British professional boxer who competed from 1992 to 2002. He was born on February 12, 1974. The WBO title, which he held from 1995 to 2000, the IBF title in 1997, and the WBC title, which he held from 1999 to 2000, were among the many featherweight world titles he had. In addition, he held the titles of European bantamweight from 1994 to 1995, lineal champion from 1998 to 2001, and IBO champion from 2002 to 2003. According to BoxRec, Hamed is the greatest British featherweight of all time. He was admitted to the International Boxing Hall of Fame in 2015. On April 14th, the night of his professional debut, Hamed was without a doubt the Prince when introduced. He did an elaborate forward flip, leapt the top rope, dressed in leopard skin, grinned, growled, broke all the rules, and with a crushing body shot, Beard was defeated in 2 rounds. The withdrawn teen from the mall had vanished.
You see him setting Ricky out and bang, right through the middle.
This is the story of the most hated and elusive KO artist, Prince Naseem Hamed.
Barrera covering up.
Before Naseem Hamed started his professional career in 1992 by knocking out Ricky Beard in the 2nd round, he was shown through Sheffield's Fargate shopping area by his trainer and mentor, Brendan Ingle, on a busy Saturday. The hesitant fighter trailed following the Irish Pied Piper, who was wearing a sandwich board and carrying a sign promoting Hamed's debut. Shoppers were forced to look his way because Ingle yelled and shouted about the boy's grandeur, while Naseem, who was only 18 at the time and barely a flyweight, shook his shoulders and dropped his head. His small frame shrank under the questioning of the bewildered locals. Tremendous puncher. Nas was a tremendous puncher, said Dominic. We'd wear pads that would go over your wrist, and Nas would hit you somewhere between the palm of your hand and your wrist. By the time we'd be done within 3 minutes, my arms were dead. And I'd have to swap with John. He could definitely whack. This punching power, fairly miraculously given his slight frame, was attributed to the size of his chunky thighs, the ease with which he had able to fire off jarring punches from all angles, whether coming forward or going backward, and also his relatively low punch-out, which allowed him to load up and reset between attacks.
He didn't expect that, or we didn't expect that. I suppose Hamed.
WBO World Championship. As the stars looked on, Hamed successfully defended his WBO World Championship 15 times and scooped the IBF and WBC versions with wins over Tom Boom Boom Johnson and Cesar Soto, respectively. He cleaned up the division. He redefined the division. Some went as far as to call him the greatest featherweight of all time. And for a while, nobody dared argue. It sounded good. But after beating Wayne McCullough in October 1998, he parted ways with Brendan Ingle and left the Winklebank altogether. Looking back, many believe it signaled the beginning of the end for Hamed. There were times when Nas was supposed to be at the gym at 4, and by the time he got there, it would be 10 o'clock at night, remembered Dominic Ingle. It took him 6 hours to do a 4-mile journey from the other side of town. You know then that the boredom has set in. He had 1,000 other things to do. He was doing appearances, sponsor stuff, meeting other celebrities, and so on. When Nas left Brendan, it was no longer the same kid or the same fighter, said Rhodes. When Nas was with Brendan, it wasn't just about power. It wasn't just about knocking people out. It was about looking good, winning, and if you get knocked out, it's a bonus. When he left, though, that's all changed. I think the Kevin Kelly fight was a wake-up call, and the Nas I saw against Barrera was nothing like the Nas I'd seen growing up. Oh yeah, Marco Antonio Barrera, the great Mexican who, back in April 2001, at the time he met Hamed, was just on his way to solidifying his greatness.
He's been trying to figure that out all night.
I think Barrera has already shown with his...
He'd recently waged a brutal fight of the year with bitter rival Eric Morales at junior featherweight and was, whisper it quietly, perhaps seen as a burnout force in the eyes of the Prince and his backers. It was, in so many ways, then the perfect fight. I would have bet everything I owed that he'd beat Barrera, said John. At 100%, Barrera wouldn't have been able to do anything with him, but you could tell Nas wasn't fit that night. He had one plan, and that was to blast him out. Nas was the perfect product, but he wasn't being looked after properly. He needed to be doing as he was told. When he was sparring at the Winco Bank, it was competitive. It was almost personal. He'd want to get the upper hand on his mates. They were proper fights. They'd test his strength of character. But going into the Barrera fight, they had little Mexican kids nobody had ever heard of. They were just happy to be there. Nas was in his comfort zone and didn't have the hunger to get out of it. It was a fight I don't think Nas should have lost. Agreed, Dominic. But if you look at the fights before that, Paul Engel gave him a load of trouble before Nas finished it with a body shot.
He really worked when he gets...
Augie Sanchez gave him a run for his money before Nas knocked him out, and he also had an ugly wrestling match with Cesar Soto. The writing was on the wall. The opponents he boxed when he left us weren't the best. There were no fantastic performances. He was just getting through fights. His style changed a bit, too. He tended to stand more southpaw and switched a lot less. When he was here, he had a lot of people around him who pushed and motivated him. Now he was getting special treatment and one-on-one sessions. It seemed to call the shots, and that reflected in his performance. He had everybody telling him Barrera was junior featherweight who was on the slide and would get knocked out. His punch was always his get-out-of-jail-free card, but you don't rely on that. Nas relied on it that night, and he ran out of time. Hamed lost a unanimous decision to Barrera, as well as his perfect record, his air of invincibility, and his mystique. Dignity also went at a precise moment. His head was slammed into the corner post by the Mexican challenger in round 12. 3 weeks after the Barrera fight, we played golf together, recalls Rose.
Barrera is fighting the way he is.
Didn't seem like the loss affected him that much, but I know it did. I knew what he was like. Nas was so proud. He genuinely never thought he would get beaten. Deep down it hurt him. The assumption was that a scorned Hamed would chase a rematch and look to set the record straight. Instead, he sheepishly dissolved into the background only to emerge 11 months later with a lackluster win over Manuel Calvo in London. The decision victory, which was greeted with boos,
Well, he's back with a win.
catcalls, and impatient foot stomps by a restless home crowd, marked the final time anybody would see Hamed in the ring. You look at most great fighters, and they lose and come back stronger, said Dominic. With Nas, though, it was like someone took away his ball and he didn't want to play anymore. He almost said, if we're not playing by my rules, I don't want to play. Nobody has seen the best of Nas unless they've been in the gym with him, said Rose, shaking his head despondently. When he retired, the kids that knew Nas were gutted because they realized the rest of the world wouldn't get to see what they had seen. He still had plenty to give. But who knows what it's like to having 35 million pounds in the bank. It takes a special person to be motivated enough to get up, train, diet, and sacrifice when you don't need to. Hamed was just 28 years old when he retired. Finally, this year, at the age of 41, he'll be inducted into the International Boxing Hall of Fame. It's been a long time coming, more than just a stellar 36-1 record. His influence and impact can be seen in the ring entrances, interviews, trunks, corkscrew, uppercuts, and unguarded faces of those who carry the mantle in 2015. He made quite the impression. It gets better, too. Take the moment a 14-year-old Muslim boy named Abdul Bari Awad met a retired Hamed and said, Nas, I want to be a champion like you. Hamed threw several stone above his old fighting weight, flashed that trademark toothy smile, looked the ambitious teenager up and down, and then replied, if you want to be a world champion like me, kid, you need to go and see a man called Brendan Engel. Eyes wide, Abdul treated his advice as the holy word and visited the Winco Bank the very next day. 10 years later, he's better known as the undefeated Kid Galahad and his world rank, and on the cusp of winning a world junior featherweight title. The prince may have gone, but his legacy lives on. What do you think of this video? Let us know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, be
one
sure
of
to hit
them
the
by
subscribe button
knockout
before you
with
go.
no defeat.
Thanks for watching.